What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Kick-Ass Podcast. We are back here today to take a look at episode 6. We have reached the finale of the 6-part docuseries of Mr. McMahon on Netflix. This one, of course, is titled The Finish, which is very fitting for a bunch of different reasons. And this one covers more heavy topics, so we'll be getting into that. The runtime for this one is over an hour. It's an hour and 5 minutes, almost an hour and 6 minutes. So yeah, we're not going to waste much time. We'll get right into it. As always, though, shout out to 411mania.com. Article is by none other than Robert Leighty Jr. Of course, as always, I will throw the article in the show notes. So yeah, definitely take a look at that. You can go back and reference the other articles that are there as well. Highly, as always, recommend it. It's bittersweet that this is the end, but hopefully we will get another series coming up soon and we'll be able to go back and reference. But definitely going to keep 411 Mania as my go-to, since I've discovered that they cover more things than just series recaps like this. They have, like I said, a whole wrestling tab section regarding up-to-date news items and things like that. So check it out. I definitely recommend it. But again, like I said, over an hour here, and this one covers a good amount of sensitive things, right? It covers the Benoit tragedy. It does reference the Grant lawsuit, but of course, the interviews that were done with Vince McMahon, his family, damn near everyone, except for a few people that they added towards the end, which was like mainly like journalists and things like that, was done 2 years ago, 3 years ago at this point. So that's unfortunate, right? But again, as I referenced in one of the episodes, I don't even think that if, let's say, they were going to record the series now and sit down and do it now, and with all the loss, well, not all, but the lawsuit against him now, I highly doubt he would be doing a sit down interview to this extent. So it's, again, bittersweet, all this to begin with, but at least we got the information and the hours that we got prior to everything, kind of this portion coming to light, at least. So again, as always, you can follow me on Twitter. Get this out of the way at Kickash Podcast _. You can follow me personally at ASHMANNS. You can find me over at Brass Ring Media as well, Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern, live. Pretty much every week. There were skipped out on 1 week because I had a personal thing I had to attend, which was planned in advance. And going on for a little over a month now, which is pretty cool. But yeah, definitely check me out over there as well. I should be back on schedule and resuming this coming Saturday as well. So feel free to slide over there and subscribe. And yeah, should be a fun time. We'll be taking a look at AEW Wrestle Dream, which is this weekend, going over everything else that's happened in the wrestling world this week. But in regards to this episode, we'll get right into it. We start off with Vince McMahon, and this was a very odd insight to how he views himself as well, and kind of like an insight into how he sees himself and how he ticks, rather. So he talks about having two different brains. He calls them two different computers, essentially, and they work against him at times. One computer is talking to the producer and another is thinking of something different. He has a third one as well that he can tap into, and it becomes difficult for him to pay attention at times. It's bothered him throughout the years, and he just wanted to be normal and fit in, but he deals with it because that's who you are. Just deal with it, Vince, is what he tells himself. He says he's at a point where he will be different and, quote, fuck the world. The producer asks what the third brain is thinking now, which was a dangerous question. Vince says the third brain essentially is having a lot of fun and it's involving sex. So, yeah, there you go. Don't even want to say you can only imagine, because I don't want to imagine what it was in yeah. But it's just wild that he just even felt so comfortable just even saying that, saying that to the producer. Again, I don't know if he has with the producer. Maybe it's someone he's comfortable with, and maybe at hours, and I think in 100 hours with him, I guess you do become pretty comfortable with someone. But like, and apparently Paul Heyman was there as well, so maybe he was just kind of playing it up. But I don't know. It was just very very odd to admit, whatever. And then we get a graphic on the screen, quote, in January 2024, Vince McMahon resigned from WWE after allegations involving sexual misconduct, assault, and trafficking. The majority of the following interviews, including with Vince McMahon, were filmed before the allegations were made public, end quote. So again, that's just another reminder for us. And or if you just started on episode 6 for some reason, to kind of clear up why they're not asking him about the allegations that are current day or even most recently, because this was recorded. Well, they didn't reference a date there, but a few years ago. Going on, we start this time in 2007 with Vince McMahon at the press conference for WrestleMania 23. Without Austin, they were always in search of something for Mr. McMahon to do. Their idea was to bring in future... Wild. It's... The life and wrestling in the world is just so strange. Finishing this sentence, their idea was to bring in future president of the United States, Donald Trump. Vince says he was always or has always been a Donald fan. Not shocking, Robert says, and he knew he was down to have some fun. He pitched the idea about a hair versus hair match with Donald Trump, which is... I'm just having a hard time getting through this. It's just fucking wild and just laughable, right? Dave Meltzer says the feud and match made WrestleMania 23 the biggest pay-per-view audience in wrestling history since has since been broken by Rock Cena 1, in quotation there, or I'm sorry, in parentheses there. But at that point it was. Dave says he was entertained by Trump when he was on the show, as he was good at speaking to pro wrestling fans. And Dave says, quote, he was perfect for the role. Bob Costas notes that Donald Trump's persona and attitude is closer to that of a wrestler than a statesman. We see various highlights of Trump on the campaign trails, losing his cool and verbally attacking people. Vince says their fingerprints are on so many things in the world, including politics. Heyman says, quote, this is what we do. They present larger-than-life characters making outlandish statements. Sharon Mazer says Donald Trump shows that pro wrestling seeped into American politics and society. Dave says we elected a president that was playing a pro wrestler on TV. He isn't sure if it is Trump being Trump, but he sees the similarities between Vince and Trump. That's wild. Our life is wild. Regardless of how you feel, it's just funny. Cena says Mr. McMahon is the greatest WWE personality ever, but was used sparingly after the Attitude Era. Brian Gewirtz says they pitched having Mr. McMahon having a midlife crisis, but Vince had the idea of someone killing him. Remember a few episodes Vince ago said they never kill anyone. So just kind of like a little insert there by Robert, which, yeah, right. We get the infamous long walk past the boys, dramatic pause, and then Vince's limo exploding. Vince notes the edit was perfect, and they receive calls to the office asking if Vince was okay. We see a shrine, rather, that's being set up outside of what looks like Full Sail University. And Donald Trump was one of the people that called to make sure Vince was okay, which it was a fantastic edit. They even got me at first. I was like, what? And yeah, once you take a second to think about it, but it's like, wow, very well done. And that infamous long walk past the boys, I'm pretty certain was what got Paul London in trouble. I think he was shown laughing or smirking or something to that effect, and it was supposed to be a serious moment. And yeah, it's just so funny looking back. The story was dropped because of and about to snap back into reality, but the story was dropped because of the Benoit double homicide suicide. We start with Vince in an empty arena informing the audience watching at home that Chris Benoit, his wife Nancy, and son Daniel were found dead. And then Robert says he was at a softball game when the news broke. After his game, he used his phone to check 411 because he was the guy that let his friends on the team know if any wrestling news had broken. Okay. No one had believed him when he passed along the news of Benoit dying, and Vince... Okay. Yeah, no one had passed... Okay, yeah. And I remember I was playing like an online game or something, and I was just like... I just thought it was like someone just like people just being assholes and just making up shit, but it was very real. Brian Brian says they did a tribute show to Chris that night in place of Raw as it was airing, they started to get the details of what really happened. So as Raw was airing that night, they were airing like the whole show was a tribute show to Benoit. And as that was airing is when they found out and were starting to find out that he had actually done the deed himself. Because at that point, no one, first of all, would have even thought that he would do something like that or that he would be capable because he, as you see if you watch this episode, so many people just admired his love for his family, and his family was everything. So to think that he could have done something like that was the last thing anyone would have brought up until that point. So yeah, I can't even imagine too, being a friend of his and coming to learn what they ended up doing, especially to the son, like it's just something else. Um Again, I don't know what I could say here on YouTube, so I'm sorry in advance, but yeah, I guess a trigger warning too. But they go on to obviously kind of tell you what happened, right? So Benoit had strangled his wife and smothered his 7-year-old son, and then took his own life by hanging himself. Cena says the tragedy rocked the foundation of WWE. The media jumped on it being roid rage. Bret Hart says all he knows is steroids doesn't make you kill your whole family. Vince says there's no correlation between steroids and what Chris did. He says people are flawed and Chris went nuts. It happens in every form of life, and that this is the only thing he can take away from it. And then in comes Christopher Nowinski, which I referenced in the last episode as well, because I gave Vince a little bit of credit for at least acknowledging CTE or acknowledging something else can be further wrong with people's brains, and acknowledging that we don't have the information now, but maybe he and the WWE can help locate that and do more research and more developments to maybe help prevent something else from happening. So again, props to them for at least trying to make things right and prevent things from happening in the future, and just getting more knowledge. So again, in comes Christopher Nowinski, a neuroscientist and former WWE superstar. He knows that he started in WWE in 2002. He was part of the first season of WWF Tough Enough, and a year later, he had a concussion that ended his career. The idea then among the boys and athletes all over the world is concussions were crap and men who sat out from them were weak. Chris wanted to learn more about concussions and wanted to change the world's culture. When he heard about Benoit, he was certain that he had CTE, a degenerative brain disease caused by repeated hits to the head. Symptoms are depression, emotion, behavior, aggression, and symptoms get worse over time as your brain rots away. It's so sad, man. He says, he saw Vince on TV say, quote, there was no way of telling this man was a monster. And Christopher Nowinski, again, believes CTE was the monster and not Benoit. He called Chris's father and agreed to let Nowinski study Benoit's brain. His brain was the worst they had ever studied, and WWE found the results speculative, but they respected the desire of that father to do whatever he can to find some explanation. Vince says it was a ridiculous statement that they would show on repeat Vince doing the diving headbutt. Or he obviously meant Benoit there. So Benoit doing the headbutt on repeat, as pretty much saying that contributed to what happened. Vince says the headbutt was complete work, and it looks like there is damage, but there is not. They know what they are doing, and they don't hurt each other. Steve Austin mentions he was dropped on his head one time during the Owen pile driver, where obviously he got really messed up. And he got a concussion there, but he can't think of many other times he had a concussion from wrestling. His takeaway has always been that if you are wrestling and getting a bunch of concussions, that quote, you were doing it wrong. I'm not a CTE guy. I just don't believe in it. And again, I was one of those people that were kind of disappointed in that, but again, that's his opinion. So it is what it is. But yeah, I don't agree with that. Nowinski says he saw the slides on Benoit's brain, and clearly he had CTE. He notes the NFL, NHL, and FIFA were still fighting them on this, and he was shocked that Vince called to help him out, essentially. Vince told him to find research that was honest because they wanted to know more themselves. They started a wholesale change in the company, and they eliminated chair shots to the head. Undertaker, says he was initially pissed as chair shots to the head were a staple of the business, but Vince made a call. Taker says he understands it now as the company is publicly traded and they needed advertisers. Chris is asked if WWE's motives were for safety or to protect their image or to protect their image essentially. Isn't sure, but it at least acknowledges in the business. So yeah, man. At the end of the day, regardless of the reason or the intent behind it, at least it was done, and at least the research was done and and just performed. We learned a lot, and it made the necessary changes that we needed going forward to protect people. So it's a win-win. The aftermath of the Benoit tragedy was everyone focusing on the fact that wrestlers were dying young. Dave says it didn't stop fans from watching, as to them it was like a TV character dying and not someone's son, husband, or father. For some, maybe, and then Robert says, for some, maybe, but as a fan, it's like seeing so many of the men that he grew up watching die. He still goes back to watch video packages and Tim Bell salutes that he wants to remember. And they flash on the screen various wrestlers that died young. Mr. Perfect at 44, Eddie Guerrero at 38, who would have just recently celebrated a birthday. So happy birthday to one of the GOATs. British Bulldog at the age of 39, and then Test at the age of 33, which is wild. I remember Test dying, but I didn't realize he was that young. And yeah, man, it's just crazy. Phil Moshnook, our friend, is back and says the fans didn't seem to care that these guys were dying young. And that and honestly what Meltzer said earlier too always bothered me, because we're not, maybe some people, but we're not idiots. We're not just like these callous people out here just blind to the fact that, yes, like, of course, like, our TV character is no longer on TV, right? But like these real life human beings are dying. Like, we're not idiots. So that's just like a slap in the face. And it's just like, come on, just dumb, and ignorant, really. Vince was defiant at first and had an interview with Armin Kitian, called award-winning by Vince in a sarcastic way. He was playing defense at first and could only take so much and he being Vince could only take so much before going on the offense. He famously slapped the papers out of Armin's hands and mocked him for insinuating Vince should be responsible for these men dying so young. Vince blames it on them openly choosing to use prescription drugs to make them feel good and having that mixed with alcohol and steroids. He says it is a horrible cocktail, and Phil asks why these deaths aren't on page 1 of every newspaper, and again, McMahon escaped it. So he's just pretty much giving him a cop-out. Dave does credit Vince, though, for the good changes that were made, as they treated concussions with more concern and care, and they had more monitoring of drug abuse and agreed to pay for rehab to anyone under contract, even if they ended up leaving the company, which they obviously still do to this day. And it's big, it's something they should do, especially since they don't offer health insurance and things like that, since they're independent contractors. So it's at least good that they do that. WrestleMania 30 is now brought up, and it's still a sore subject to me, because I can't believe the streak is over, guys, and I'll still always be salty about that. The Undertaker brings up his streak and how it became a major attraction at WrestleMania. He says he was supposed to win until the day of the show when Vince changed his mind. Vince says Mark, the Undertaker, wasn't prepared for it and thinks he was in shock. Taker says he was concussed 5 minutes into the match and went another 25 minutes. To this day, he doesn't remember being in the match at all, which is just wild. Vince says a concussion may have happened, but he thinks Mark can't remember the match because it was so traumatic, which is just insulting, too. Again, like a fucking slap in the face to Taker. Like, it probably was very upsetting to him in multiple reasons and ways, him being Taker, or that the streak would be ending and making such a brash decision just the day of. But like, come on, dude. He even went to the hospital after it. Come on, like, come on. um, it's just so ignorant. Again, that might be the word of the day. um. All right, so continuing on. He thinks Yeah, famously and shockingly, Brock gets the pin to end the streak. Taker was loaded up and even taken to a hospital, and Vince left Mania to be with Mark and his wife. Taker talks about having 18 different surgeries and having a limp, but he wouldn't change anything and wishes he could still do it to this day, essentially. I just, yeah, it's just the whole thing with Vince just saying that. I was like, come on, bro, like, get real. We jumped to Cody Rhodes, who says he came into WWE in 2007 and they instituted rather, the wellness policy. Cody says he came into a clean WWE with drugs and with what they were doing on air as they switched from TV 14 to TV PG. Okay, so yeah, clean with drugs, like no drugs. The reason Vince changed was because of the advertising opportunities, and he wanted to make the company as much money as possible. Enter John Cena again. Cena was the face of that era, and Vince says that turn paid off literally and figuratively. The fans that lived on the Attitude Era and Ruthless Aggression were very pissed, though. They mentioned it literally became the Muppet Show. Yeah, and yeah, Cena was the literally the face of that with the different colored T-shirts like the Fruity Pebble shirts that Rock mentioned. Just wild. Um, Heyman brings up the women's evolution and how it coincided with the move to TV PG. I think this. Oh yeah, and Robert says I think his math is a little off there as they went PG in 2008, and the women still weren't being given much to do until 2015 or 16 or so, which is fair. At least, yeah, not on the main roster. But in NXT they were, but yeah, again, not on the main roster. Stephanie brings up the Give Divas a Chance movement that happened on Raw after the women were given less than a few minutes for a match. Yeah, there was a time where they literally were given like less than 2 minutes and like 2-3 minutes a segment, which is just shameful. The producer asks Dave where Shane was, and he says, quote, Shane was kind of out for the most part at that point. Shane McMahon says he was gone for several years, and in 2016, Vince called with an idea. The truth is, Vince needed something for Mania, and he had a rash of injuries that destroyed the card. With that said, Shane returning was one of those holy shit moments, and the place exploded for him. It did. If you haven't seen the clip, definitely seek it out. Shane says he still gets goosebumps thinking about it and gets emotional talking about the reaction because he returned to something that he loved. He got choked up in the ring as he could see the pride on Vince's face and could see Steph was trying not to cry, which is, it's a, as a family, you're happy for them to have that moment. It all led to Shane versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania inside Hell in a Cell. Vince actually dropped an F-bomb that was not bleeped there as he got so caught up in the moment. Yeah. WrestleMania 32, Shane had not been in the ring in 7 years. The greatest thing was being able to go out and have his 3 boys go out there with him. Yeah, which is a really cool moment. It was like a last minute thing. His boys were backstage, and he was like, "Hey guys, you want to go out there with me?" And they were all dressed like Shane too, like in the button up like baseball jerseys. I think it is. So it's pretty cool. They show. Oh yeah, Shane snapped back into it when he realized that he was facing Taker inside Hell of a Cell. They show Vince watching the match backstage at Gorilla, and Booker T says it was like Shane was trying to prove something to Vince all the time and did all this crazy shit in the ring, which he did, man. Shane is, just wild. He really did more than he needed to, but you could tell that he was trying to prove a point, and I respect that. Always have. We go back to, oh my god, literally one of my favorite matches. We go back to King in the Ring 2001 versus Kurt Angle, where Shane was dropped straight on his head multiple times on concrete. It's just sickening and brutal, man. It was sickening, or it's still sickening to watch, which is what Robert references as well. But Angle was determined to put Shane through the glass. Once through it, he had to go back, and it took 3 times to throw Shane through the glass, and the thuds that you heard were just disgusting. Booker T says he felt for Shane that night. He took it like a champ. Go Booker. Vince says Shane wanted to earn his stripes and did things nobody else could do and knew it was his. We see Shane falling and jumping off the entrance stage. So yeah. But to be fair too, like he didn't have to go out there and wrestle every week, but I think that's probably why he wanted to do this crazy shit even more so to make up for that. Back to WrestleMania as Shane climbs the Hell in a Cell, and we cut back to Steph nervously watching the screen while Vince is feeding commentary lines to Cole. And yeah, and Robert says, we knew it was done, but it's kind of jarring to see it happen. Which, yeah. Shane jumps off the cell and crashes through the table, which again, it's just fucking crazy. And they show Steph and Vince's reaction backstage. Vince says maybe he should have given Shane more pats on the back and shoulder, and perhaps it's because he didn't get it from his dad, which is why he didn't give it to his son Shane. He admits to being very proud of Shane and was proud of him for that match. And Shane says, quote, I got a hug that night. And they show Vince giving Shane the hug in Gorilla, and he has tears in his eyes. Shane says it was an emotional night, and Vince says Shane told him all he wanted was his dad's respect. Shane tells the producer, getting moments like that were hard to come by. And again, I talked about it a lot in the last episode, but it's just, it's sad that Vince didn't take the shortcomings that he got from his dad and didn't make up for that with his son, and it's just sad. Triple H brings up how some of the wrestlers will say Vince was a father figure, like Taker, Trish, and Cena all say Vince was like a father figure to them. Undertaker says, honestly, I would take a bullet for that man. And I believe it too. David Shoemaker, says all the stars in WWE are desperate for Vince's approval, and that includes his kids. He says Shane was only back on as an on-screen talent, but Shane was trying to get his way back to being next in line. Shane says that was the case, but only because he wanted to continue the family business. Dave says Shane always figured he would be the next McMahon, but it didn't happen because many would say that Stephanie was better at it than him. Ain't wrong there. Tony Atlas says Stephanie is just like her dad and Shane is nice. Atlas continues that you can't be nice and be a boss in the wrestling world. And Robert says Tony Khan is talking to you and facts about that. And that's sad too. That's sad that could be true. He continues that with Stephanie, you can't take advantage of that woman. Vince, Stephanie, and Triple H were the three most powerful people in WWE. They were in charge for the launch of the WWE Network, saw TV rights deals explode, which led to a huge deal with Peacock. The social media platforms exploded as well. And then we had Linda McMahon joining Donald Trump's cabinet, which, yay. They do have AEW footage. As they mentioned, competition started up in 2019. One of the founders and biggest stars was Cody Rhodes, and 3 years later, he left to come back to the WWE. And that's all that we got from AEW in the AEW reference. The stock price kept soaring, and Shoemaker says it didn't have the vitality of Hogan's era in the 80s, and certainly not of the Attitude Era, but Vince kept creating new stars, and that became the faces of the company. Because of the success of Roman Reigns, it seemed like if Vince ever stepped down, it would be Triple H and Stephanie next in line. Shawn Michaels says it is above his pay grade, but he heard Triple H was next. Vince says there's a succession plan, but tells the producer he never sees himself retiring. Quote, when you stop growing, you die. What are you going to do when you retire? So, go die? Yeah. Hogan doesn't think Vince will ever retire, and Cena says the same. They all say this over Vince taking the worst recorded stunner in history at WrestleMania 38, which was dreadful. Booker says it would take a nuclear bomb exploding for Vince to retire. So here comes the bomb. Get a quick trick for that one. June of 2022. Vince McMahon steps down as CEO amid allegations that he paid $3 million in hush money to a former employee that he had an affair with. Ted Mann, no relation, I don't think. Wall Street Journal reporter says it started with a tip that the board received an anonymous email about Vince covering up an affair. Vince paid her $100,000 and increased it to $200,000 when they started having sex. So that was her salary. Dave wonders how consensual it could have been when one person is your boss and also the boss is Vince McMahon. People are reluctant to speak because of Vince's power, and Dave was shocked that Vince didn't go after the reporters, as that it was not how he generally responded. So that kind of tells you right there that he was being more timid in his response, and in his response. Oh, my hair is just popping out there. Vince did decide to come out on SmackDown, as Dave tells us he was no longer CEO, but was still on the board and head of creative. They even announced Vince would be on the air, and it got a huge rating. Everyone cheered for Vince in the crowd, and this was his FU to the story. Which, yeah, I remember. Yeah, obviously, I remember it's just a couple years ago, but I remember being perplexed too, and just like what? Until we got more information. Now we have an empty chair, as after the or quote, after the allegations became public, Vince McMahon canceled his final interviews for the series, unquote. So again, that's what I was saying earlier. As shitty as all this is, at least the timing happened the way it did. It's again as bad as it is. The reporter says when the story was reported, some reacted with, "What did you expect?" The character Mr. McMahon was a sex addict who made out and flirted with all the divas, and what complicated matters was the blurring of the lines between Vince and Mr. McMahon. This is like Hulk Hogan and Terry Bollea all over again. But the report showed was some of the aspects that were played for laughs with the character were not funny. They found more allegations against Vince, including the incident, okay, here we go, at a tanning salon in 2006 where Vince showed a worker naked photos. Prosecutors didn't think there was anything to pursue there, and charges were, or like any charges to pursue essentially, and noted Vince denied the allegations. Weeks later, Vince created a storyline where Mickey James was making up stories about being sexually assaulted by someone. Yeah. Swell guy. The more they reported, the more people came out to talk. Vince was accused of paying $12 million to four different women, and there was one settlement for $7.5 million with a former wrestler over oral sex. And when she wouldn't do more, he didn't renew her contract. Such a piece of shit, you know. Dave notes Vince was always the guy you figured would survive everything, but 2 weeks later, he retired on a Friday afternoon, and it was to juice up the ratings for SmackDown. Steph is made the CEO and starts a "Thank you, Vince" chant in the ring and on that SmackDown, which is just, again, wow. And again, it was before more information came to light at that point, but still, we were getting enough. Dave says it was what he expected, but it was still surreal to see that Vince was no longer running the company. Cody Rhodes says that it was chaos backstage, as nobody knew what WWE would look like without Vince. Dave's initial thoughts were that Stephanie would be the face of the company and Triple H would run creative. That's essentially what happened as well. They asked Hogan if the business can survive without Vince, and he said he doesn't think it will, which is, it's actually thriving more so. Dave is asked if he thinks Vince will ever be back, and Dave says, because it's wrestling, I would say yes. And again, that was 2022. I'm pretty certain when they spoke with Dave. January 2023, Vince McMahon has returned as executive chairman, and Stephanie stepped down as co-CEO. And it was just wild. That I just couldn't believe that I could believe that he came back, but I couldn't believe that he came back. Because it was like almost like a tease too, like, okay, he's gone, like Triple H is in charge, Stephanie's in charge, like we're on the right path, like should be heading forward, and then it was just like a gut punch. But fast forward a year, they bring Dave back to sit down and ask his reaction about Vince's return. Dave laughs and says it was weird. Cody says he wasn't surprised and was surprised that people were surprised. Dave had heard that Vince was getting itchy, but didn't know if he could return because the board had voted unanimously for him not to return. That included Stephanie and Triple H voting against Vince returning. Vince had the controlling votes, though, and changed members of the board to those that would do what he wanted. It brought back, I forget their name, Michelle, I forget the names. He brought back 2 people that he'd actually let go, but who were in favor of him. Again, wild. Dave says that Vince felt he should never have quit and was told by someone close to him that he should, and he thinks that it was Stephanie. And Vince was always mad and always felt like he got the wrong advice for being told to step down, and Dave thinks that it was Stephanie that gave that advice. Vince forced his way back in, and Dave Shoemaker thinks Stephanie stepped down by her own choice because she wanted nothing to do with the company if Vince was back. We then get footage of Heyman whispering in Steph's ear, "You know he's put you in a position constantly in life to battle him. You know that, right?" And she laughs. "It sure feels that way." Pritchard Bruce Pritchard, says that he has no clue what happened with Stephanie and takes shots at Dave and Shoemaker for making up lies. They don't know. Vince was back to sell the company, and a deal is made to sell to Endeavor, who also owned the UFC. They combined the two to form a $21 billion company called TKO. Pritchard felt the sale was a genius move, and it was a new challenge to Vince. Dave says it was the idea to sell it in a way where Vince still had major say-so in the show, essentially. Vince no longer had majority control, though, as the shareholders had 51%. And Evil Mustache Vince says on TV it was the right decision for the business. Heyman says it is not about the last name or the family legacy, but who is best qualified. And yeah, the Evil Stash Vince is wild. Wild is the word of the day, I guess, too. Dave says the company is doing the best since 2002, and profits and revenue are bigger than ever. People will support a product and not care about the evil person running it if they are being entertained. 10 years, that is worth more than $5 billion. So, yeah, speaking of Netflix. January 23rd, 2024, the day of the Netflix/WWE deal announcement. The producer asks Pritchard if he saw some of the episodes of the show, and Bruce says he thought that they sucked. He didn't think that they were balanced, and Robert says of course he didn't. He felt it was a gotcha piece in how they can make Vince look bad. Yeah. And again, to be fair, sometimes there are edits that are portrayed and done to make people look a certain way, but I don't think that was necessarily the case here, because come on. Pritchard says Vince is a businessman, and the other side is that Vince made sure Bruce's wife had the best care when she was diagnosed with cancer. She was given 4 years to live life, but because Vince got her the best care, she was 24 years, but because Vince got her the best care, essentially, that was 24 years ago, and she's still here with us. So that's amazing, and shout out to that. He says it wasn't a story on Vince's life, but a way to see how big of an asshole they can make Vince. And again, I'm not going to act like I know him, right? But we do hear of him doing things like that. And he does have a nice side to him, but I mean, come on. 2 days later, the Janelle Grant lawsuit comes out, and there's no coming back from this one. Khadijah Safdar, Wall Street Journal reporter, says she was tipped off about the lawsuit coming, and it happened because a little bit of typo there, but it's fine. Because she had been writing about sex trafficking suits. She believes WWE was shocked by the suit and didn't see it coming, which I'm sure they didn't. Grant alleges in the suit that Vince forced her to have sex with him and other men at WWE headquarters for job security. Grant was the first woman they reported on back in 2022. The suit says she was exploited by Vince and trafficked to other men. Shoemaker said Shoemaker didn't think anything in the suit could shock him, but then he was floored when he read it, which I think everyone was. Yeah, I was just reading through. I'm not gonna go through exactly what the suit says again because it's so demeaning to her. But if you're interested, just search it. You can find the crazy details. One reporter points out that these were one-sided texts and what Grant wanted people to see, but it gave a window into the relationship that you don't see. Khadijah says the crazy part is Vince wasn't hiding all this, which is unusual, and it brings Brock into the story as Vince shared photos of Grant with him and offered her up to Brock for sex. And that was a piece to get Brock supposedly and allegedly to renew his deal with WWE. That was, I guess you would call it a perk. Vince denies all the allegations, but resigns from TKO the next day out of respect for the WWE universe. Yeah, sure. It showed things had changed as Vince was no longer in control. After Grant came forward, others started to share their stories, and we go back to 2016 when Ashley Massaro claimed she was raped on a WWE tour of Kuwait by a man posing as a military doctor in 2006. She accused WWE of not responding, and that WWE covered it up to protect the business. WWE claimed they were never informed, and what she claims happened is frightening and sickening, and it's hard for her to account. Sadly, Massaro was found dead in an apparent suicide. Massaro's attorney released a statement after Grant's lawsuit that Vince wanted to have sex with Massaro and she rejected his advances. He then put her in stories that were aimed to embarrass her, and we see Vince mocking her about crying and throwing coffee at her on one of the shows. It's so sad. And shout out to her daughter, you know, because Ashley had a daughter, and I think she's like in her maybe mid-20s now, maybe early 20s. And it's just sad what her mom apparently went through, and says to have gone through, and just everything, you know, and that she didn't find the help, and she was just stuck, you know, just dealing with that. So it's just sad, man. It's just really sad, you know. Vince was removed from his job, sold all of his stock for billions, and has basically vanished. What's amazing is the WWE has thrived without him, and we see Stephanie show up at WrestleMania 40. We see Cody versus Roman highlights, and Triple H saying they destroyed all gates, and this was legitimately the biggest WrestleMania of all time. Undertaker is asked what Vince's legacy will be. He has a hard time coming up with an answer. Same thing for Trish Stratus, Booker T, and John Cena, who says he's the wrong guy to ask that question. Tony Atlas has no problem answering and says the greatest promoter of all time. He earned that even if there are things about him I don't like or respect, but you can't take that from him. Which is a pretty good synopsis. Meltzer says there's a lot of positive and a lot of negative, and Vince is the most important figure in the history of pro wrestling. In his prime, he was a creative genius, and he was far from a saint. Shoemaker says wrestling was built as simple, good versus bad, but the real lesson from Vince is life is never that simple. Vince is the man that helped create this thing we love, but he is also a problematic and possibly deplorable human being. Facts. Back to Vince from 2021, and he says he has no legacy. People confuse who he is with his character. He knows who he is when he looks in the mirror. He says the lines of fact and fiction are blurred in the business, and talks about the individual getting lost in the character, and he wonders which is his character and what is him. He thinks he is a blend, and he isn't sure which one is exaggerated. And then more quotes here. Vince McMahon is currently under federal criminal investigation related to the allegations of sexual misconduct and trafficking. Brock Lesnar has no publicly, or it should be not. Brock Lesnar has not publicly commented on his involvement in the allegations. And finally, Janelle Grant's lawsuit is paused while the federal investigation is conducted. Yeah, and then that's the end of the show. I'm just reading through here for Robert's additional thoughts and comments. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, sorry for the dead air. I was just reading through here to see if there was anything else. But my thoughts as a whole in regard to the whole docuseries, the 6-part series, I like that they broke it up into 6 parts. I think it was a good amount of episodes. I like the length and things like that. Clearly, we need a follow-up. Once things play out in maybe a year or 2 from now, depending on how long everything takes. And I think we need that just so the people who were filmed here and were interviewed here get the opportunity to maybe readdress their thoughts and to state exactly how they feel about everything as a whole. Because the pressure of either still working for Vince or being influenced by Vince won't be a thing. So maybe you'll get more freedom and more willingness to speak. But of course, there was a lot that they didn't go over and things that they didn't get too in depth of or on. You do have limited time, even though you did make it a 6-part series. There still is time constraints, right? It is interesting though that they have the 200 hours, and I wonder if they'll release any additional like snippets or episodes or anything like that on this. But yeah, I think that they have a lot of opportunity to follow up and to dig a little bit deeper. and not necessarily take a dark side of the ring approach, but get more indirect with some of the allegations from the past and the present that have been made, and to explore more about certain cases and certain things versus like the Jimmy Snuka and everything like that. Maybe get more information in that regard, and maybe not, because they went to trial with that before Jimmy ended up passing away. I don't know all the full details, but that's just the first thing that came to mind. But just, I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot more that's covered that can be. And again, I know that that's not necessarily the direction here, and they're not detectives or investigators or anything like that. But I think now that people, like I said, don't have the fear of any backlash from him directly, I think that maybe more information can be obtained. So that's what I would be intrigued to hear and to get if I could. Um, I'm very happy that they included the situation in the lawsuit with Janelle Grant and interviewed the people that they could. Again, I didn't expect any information from Vince or from her directly or anything like that. But I'm glad that they at least included that, and that they referenced that and handled it throughout the show. And they reminded you, hey, all of these interviews that you're seeing right now, these are done prior to the lawsuits. So just as a reminder, um, I hate to say I liked, but I'm glad that they brought in Christopher Nowinski as well, and they handled the CTE portion of it, and they asked Vince direct questions in regards to that, and they pushed back against him on certain things that he was maybe contradictory of. But again, you're only going to get so far and so much information. So I'm just thankful that we got what we got. It is interesting to hear that Eric Bischoff though said that his interview, he doesn't remember exactly when he did his interview and his piece, and that he wasn't told it was for a Mr. McMahon documentary. Or so that's what he said. So maybe he just doesn't remember, or maybe it was in regards for something else, and he was interviewed for a different piece, and they just used that information for this docuseries. So again, if that's the case, maybe that was the same for other people as well. But it just seemed like the questions were very direct. So I don't know, but I think that this was I kind of got the feeling that this was just the beginning too of this series, and we will be getting a follow up. It's just a matter of time. And again, once more information comes out. But with that being said, thank you so much for checking out the show. I really appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at @kickashpodcast_. You can follow me personally at ASHMANNS. But until next time, and until the next recording, stay safe out there, guys, and just enjoy some wrestling. Take care.